Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of medieval Scotland. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of rough stone and peat smoke, growing still beneath a cold evening mist. We'll drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften, and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly, and let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of medieval Scotland come to you. The tiny island of Iona sits quietly off the west coast. It became the spiritual heart of Scotland by pure chance. In the year 563, an exiled Irish monk named Columba sailed across the grey waters. He looked for a very specific kind of peace. He wanted a place where he could no longer see his homeland. When his small boat finally scraped the white sand, he looked back. Ireland was gone from view. That simple visual boundary told him to stay. He built a modest wooden camp near the beach. The air here smells of salt and damp earth. The wind moves constantly through the short grass. From this remote outpost, a new tradition slowly spread across the mainland. You can still stand on that same beach today. The view across the water remains just as empty. The horizon offers nothing but open sea and quiet sky. Further south, another major settlement began as a quiet retreat. The city of Glasgow did not start as a busy center of trade. It began with a single man seeking isolation. In the 6th century, St. Mungo found a deep, wooded ravine. A clear stream called the Molandinar Burn flowed quickly through the trees. The steep banks muffled the sounds of the outside world. It was the perfect place for a life of quiet prayer. He built a small church, right beside the rushing water. The damp shade of ancient oak trees provided natural shelter. A modest community slowly gathered around him in the glen. They lived simply, listening to the constant sound of the burn. Today, a massive modern city surrounds that original site. The deep ravine is mostly gone, but the city grew outward from that one peaceful spot. It all started with a desire for silence. Not far away, the landscape shifts along the River Clyde. A massive volcanic rock rises straight out of the water. Its twin dark peaks form a natural fortress. For centuries, this stone outcrop served as a royal capital. Kings ruled from timber halls built high on the summit. The sheer cliffs offered perfect protection from land attacks. But the threat eventually came from the water. In the year 870, Viking longships sailed up the wide river. They laid siege to the rock for 4 long months. The defenders finally ran out of water, and the fortress fell. The wooden walls burned, sending thick smoke into the night sky. The survivors had to abandon their ancient home. They moved their center of power inland, to a place called Govan. The great rock was left empty, standing silently in the river. The Viking rule of the western coast eventually ended because of the weather. The turning point happened on a rocky beach at Largs in 1263. A massive Norwegian fleet had arrived to claim control over the islands. But the autumn skies darkened, and a fierce storm blew in from the sea. The wind howled, churning the grey water into heavy waves. The wooden longships were violently pushed toward the shore. Many vessels smashed against the hard rocks. The storm did what no army could do alone. As the tired sailors struggled onto the wet stones, Scottish forces waited for them. The weather had completely broken the naval fleet. The battle that followed permanently shifted the balance of power. The western waters would no longer belong to the Norse kings. Today, the beach is a quiet place. The tide rolls in gently, washing over the same stones where the great fleet fell. Out in the Hebrides, the sea was never seen as a barrier. For the people living on these scattered islands, the water was a highway. This unique geography allowed the region to remain fiercely independent. The lords of the Isles ruled this watery kingdom for centuries. They controlled the deep channels, using nimble galleys called berlins. These wooden ships featured a single square sail and banks of oars. They could navigate narrow straits and shallow bays with ease. Land-based kings in the south simply could not project power across so much water. The island lords became a true naval superpower. They moved troops, traded goods, and collected taxes along the coastal routes. The sound of oars dipping into the cold sea was the sound of authority. The rugged islands were perfectly connected by the tides. The ocean kept them safe, holding the rest of the country away. Sailing those western waters required deep local knowledge. Sometimes, the safest route meant leaving the water entirely. The village of Tarbet sits on a very narrow strip of land. Its name literally translates to portage. Medieval sailors quickly learned to fear the deadly currents around the Mull of Kintyre. The long journey around the peninsula was simply too dangerous for small wooden boats. So they found a physical shortcut. Crews would row into the calm bay at Tarbert and step ashore. They laid down wooden rollers across the damp grass. Then, they hauled their heavy boats out of the water. Using thick ropes and sheer muscle, they dragged the ships across the solid ground. They pulled them all the way to the water on the other side. This hard labor was still better than facing the deadly southern storms. The land itself became a vital part of the sailing route. Further north, a massive geological scar cuts across the highlands. The Great Glen is a deep fault line that completely shaped medieval travel. The steep, forested mountains on either side made land journeys nearly impossible. Instead, a chain of dark, narrow locks filled the valley floor. This long stretch of water became the only practical highway through the rugged terrain. Because travel was restricted to this one watery path, whoever controlled the locks controlled the north. Stone castles were built at key points along the shores. These solitary fortresses guarded the narrow peninsulas and river mouths. They acted as tollbooths and military checkpoints. A boat could not pass through the glen without being seen from a tower window. The dramatic landscape forced all human movement into a single line. The deep water provided a smooth journey, but the towering stone walls made sure no one traveled unnoticed. At the northern end of that long valley sits Inverness. It was built as a royal burgh for a very specific reason. The town was designed to act as a heavily armed checkpoint. It sits right at the mouth of the River Ness. This is where the fresh water meets the sea. It was the only place where Scottish kings could watch the rebellious Highland clans. As people came down from the mountains to trade, they had to pass through this spot. The Crown built a timber castle on a grassy hill, overlooking the river. From that high point, soldiers could watch every boat and traveler. The town grew around the base of the hill. It was protected by the garrison. It was a place of trade, but also a place of strict control. The kings used it to collect taxes and enforce the law. The river brought wealth, and the castle brought order. Moving east along the coast, the rugged mountains suddenly give way to flat plains. The town of Elgin sits in a rare microclimate known as the Light of Moray. This area holds some of the most fertile soil in the entire country. While other regions struggled with rocky ground, the fields around Elgin produced massive harvests. The flat, golden fields of wheat generated incredible farming wealth. Because of this rich earth, the town became a major center of power. The local bishops used the farming profits to fund a grand stone cathedral. It was so beautiful that it became known as the Lantern of the North. The ornate carvings and towering walls stood in sharp contrast to the simple rural landscape. The church was a direct product of the dirt beneath it. The soft, forgiving soil allowed a masterpiece of medieval architecture to rise under the clear northern sky. Far off the northern coast, the town of Kirkwall feels entirely different. Walking through its streets, you might think you are in Scandinavia. That is because the town was founded by Norse earls in the 11th century. For hundreds of years, the Orkney Islands were a proud Norwegian territory. Timber longhouses with turf roofs clustered around the natural harbour. Viking longships rested on the shingle beach under the cold northern daylight. The culture, the language, and the architecture were all deeply tied to the Sea Kings of Norway. Kirkwall only became part of Scotland in 1468 due to a royal money problem. The islands were pawned to pay a dowry for a Danish princess marrying a Scottish king. The debt was never repaid, and the territory permanently changed hands. But the town never lost its original character. The northern wind still carries the quiet memory of its long Norse history. Back on the mainland, the city of Aberdeen developed with a split personality. It did not grow as a single settlement, but as two entirely separate towns. Old Aberdeen took root near the banks of the River Don. It was a quiet, scholarly place, centered around a grand cathedral and a university. The streets there were filled with monks, students, and quiet thought. Just a short distance south, New Aberdeen grew around the River Dee. This was a gritty, busy port focused entirely on trade and fishing. Wooden boats unloaded heavy barrels at the docks. Stone merchant houses with stepped gables lined the busy harbour. The two towns existed side by side for centuries, each with its own distinct rhythm. One looked toward heaven and knowledge, while the other looked toward the sea and profit. They remained completely independent. It took until the 19th century for them to finally merge together. Further south, the landscape around the town of Forfar has been completely rewritten. In the medieval period, the town was essentially an island fortress. It was built on a narrow peninsula, surrounded on three sides by a massive loch. The deep waters and thick marshland provided a perfect natural defense. The town felt isolated, wrapped in morning mist and the sound of waterbirds. But over the centuries, the local people needed more space to grow food. They began a slow, steady process of draining the great loch. Slowly, the water receded, revealing rich, dark earth beneath. The marshes were transformed into highly fertile farmland. This massive engineering effort completely altered the local geography. The ancient watery boundaries vanished, leaving the old peninsula stranded on dry land. Today, you can walk across solid green fields that used to be underwater. The town simply outgrew its lake, trading its natural moat for wheat. The city of Perth found its wealth by bringing the sea inland. It sits on the River Tay, far from the open ocean. But the river was deep enough to be sailed by large, sea-going ships. This geographical quirk turned the town into a highly successful medieval capital. Merchants could sail their wooden cogs all the way up the river to the inland docks. They traded directly with Europe, exchanging wool and hides for wine and silk. The inland location offered a massive advantage. The stone storehouses along the muddy riverbank were completely safe from coastal Viking raids. The town enjoyed all the economic benefits of a major seaport, without any of the usual dangers. The docks were always busy, filled with the sounds of creaking timber and foreign languages. The river provided a safe, hidden corridor to the rest of the world. Perth grew rich quietly, tucked safely behind the hills. On the eastern coast, a quiet village transformed into a massive religious capital. The town of St. Andrews owes its entire medieval layout to a single powerful rumor. Monks claimed they had brought the bones of St. Andrew the Apostle to the shore. Word of the holy relic spread quickly across Europe. Soon, a massive influx of wealthy pilgrims began arriving at the windy coastal settlement. They walked the dirt paths in heavy wool cloaks, seeking miracles and forgiveness. The money they brought funded the construction of a truly massive stone cathedral. It was built right on the grassy cliff edge, overlooking the grey sea. Wooden scaffolding clung to the towering walls for decades as the structure grew. The tiny village expanded rapidly to house and feed the endless stream of visitors. A simple stretch of coastline became the spiritual center of the nation. It was all built on the power of faith. Just down the coast, the town of Crail experienced a very different fate. It was once a booming medieval trading port, full of life and commerce. Stone houses with bright red pantile roofs lined the cliffs above the water. But the town had a fatal geographic flaw. Its curved stone harbor was notoriously small and highly prone to silting. The tide constantly dragged deep mud and sand into the narrow anchorage. As the centuries passed, merchant ships began to grow larger and require deeper water. Eventually, the new vessels simply could no longer enter the shallow port. The trading economy collapsed, and the town stopped growing entirely. This economic freeze accidentally preserved the ancient street plan perfectly. Without new money, no one tore down the old buildings to build larger ones. Today, the quiet harbor looks much as it did hundreds of years ago. The mud that ruined the port saved its history. Further along the shore, the town of Culross found wealth in the rocks. It became an industrial powerhouse long before the modern era. The secret to its success was discovered by local monks. They found thick seams of coal exposed right on the rocky shoreline. They began digging small, primitive mine shafts directly into the coastal cliffs. But they did not just sell the coal. They used it to fuel massive fires near the water's edge. Large iron pans were filled with seawater and boiled over the flames. As the water evaporated, it left behind precious white salt. This lucrative salt-making industry shaped the entire wealth of the town. Thick smoke constantly rose from the beaches, glowing in the dusklight. The combination of free fuel and endless ocean water created a perfect economic engine. The town grew rich by simply boiling the sea, using the black rocks found at its feet. Neke. Inland from the coast, Dunfermline became a royal centre through a famous marriage. In 1070, an English princess named Margaret arrived in the quiet town. She was fleeing the Norman conquest of her homeland. She married the Scottish king Malcolm III, in a small stone church surrounded by dense forest. Margaret brought sweeping changes to the royal court. She introduced European monasticism to the town, inviting foreign monks to establish a new abbey. This single decision began to shift the entire culture of the Scottish court. The old Gaelic traditions slowly gave way to continental European customs. The town grew around the new religious foundation and the royal hunting lodge. The soft light of dawn would catch the new stone walls rising above the trees. Dunfermline became a place of quiet power and deep religious devotion. A fleeing princess completely changed the cultural direction of the nation from this one spot. The most strategically important city in the country grew around a single bottleneck. Stirling sits where the River Forth meanders through a vast flat valley. In medieval times, the land around the river was an impassable peat bog. The deep, treacherous marshland stretched for miles in every direction. There was only one narrow, solid crossing point where an army could safely march. A simple wooden bridge spanned the winding river at this exact spot. Because of this geography, anyone traveling between the highlands and the lowlands had to pass through Stirling. A great stone castle was built on a high hill to guard the crossing. The misty bogs forced all trade, travel and warfare onto one tiny path. You could not bypass the town without sinking into the mud. The landscape itself funneled the entire history of the nation through this one narrow bridge. The mud made the city powerful. Just a short journey away, Linlithgow grew for a very practical reason. It sits exactly halfway between the great fortresses of Edinburgh and Stirling. In the days of horse travel, it was precisely a one-day ride from either castle. The Scottish kings realized it was the perfect place to stop and rest. They built a grand stone palace beside a calm, quiet loch. It was designed as a luxurious retreat from the cold military strongholds. Whenever the royal court moved between the major cities, they stopped here for the night. A thriving medieval town quickly grew around the palace gates to serve the royal entourage. Timber and stone houses filled with merchants, bakers, and blacksmiths lined the streets. The town thrived simply by being a convenient waypoint on a busy royal road. The warm afternoon sun still reflects off the loch, illuminating the walls of the ultimate medieval rest stop. The dramatic skyline of Edinburgh exists entirely because of ancient ice. The medieval old town sits on a steep, craggy incline that seems almost impossible to build on. This dramatic shape is a direct result of the last ice age. A massive glacier moved slowly east across the landscape, crushing everything in its path. But it hit the hard volcanic plug of Castle Rock and split in two. The ice flowed around the dense stone, leaving a sloping tail of softer rock in its wake. When the ice finally melted, it left behind a perfect ramp, leading up to an impenetrable cliff. This sloping ridge became the only practical path to build a road to the fortress. Early timber and stone dwellings clung to the steep sides of the tail. The pale morning sunlight still breaks over the same jagged profile today. The city streets simply follow the path carved by ice. To control these growing towns, King David I physically changed the landscape. He wanted to enforce his new laws across the country. To do this, he created a system of sheriffdoms, dividing the land into administrative districts. But laws mean nothing without a way to enforce them. So he built a vast network of motte and bailey castles. These were steep, artificial mounds of earth, topped with wooden palisades and towers. A defensive ditch usually surrounded the base. This introduced the first widespread castle building to the nation. The sudden appearance of these towering earthworks sent a clear message to the local people. The king's justice had arrived, and it was heavily armed. The bright midday sun cast long shadows from these new wooden towers. They were quick to build, but they permanently altered the shape of the towns. The landscape was molded by hand to ensure the new laws were obeyed. The borders of the kingdom expanded southward due to a single decisive morning. The wealthy Lothian region was not always part of Scotland. Its integration happened because of the Battle of Carham in the year 1018. The Scottish king marched his army to the banks of the River Tweed. In the soft light of dawn, canvas tents and banners covered the northern bank. The Scottish forces defeated the Northumbrians on the flat, fertile plains. This victory permanently moved the national border south to the river. It was a massive geographic shift that changed the economy forever. The newly conquered land contained the most fertile agricultural soil in the region. The wide, calm river now marked the edge of a much richer kingdom. The victory brought endless fields of grain under Scottish control. A single battle on a quiet riverbank secured the food supply for generations to come. Sitting right on that new border was the port of Berwick-upon-Tweed. For a time, it was the most prosperous maritime town in the country. Wooden ships filled the harbour, and merchants traded goods from across Europe. But its location exactly on the border proved to be a curse. As wars raged, the town changed hands between England and Scotland 14 different times. Heavy stone defensive walls were built to surround the streets. Soldiers in chainmail constantly patrolled the battlements under moody, overcast skies. The endless cycle of sieges and destruction eventually ruined the local economy. Merchants stopped coming to a port that was always under attack. The bustling trade center slowly froze into a heavily fortified garrison town. The massive walls that were meant to protect the wealth ended up outlasting it. Today, the quiet streets are still wrapped in the heavy stone armor of those endless border wars. Just inland, another great border town suffered an even more extreme fate. Roxburgh was once one of the 4 great burghs of the nation. It was a thriving community protected by a massive stone castle near the River Tweed. But its location made it a constant target for invading English armies. In 1460, the Scots made a drastic decision. They realized the fortress was too dangerous to leave standing. Workers with pickaxes and wooden carts arrived at the site. They deliberately dismantled the great castle, taking it apart stone by stone. They scattered the rubble across the grassy mounds, so it could never be used as a stronghold again. Without the castle to protect it, the town simply faded away. The people left, and the buildings crumbled into the earth. Today, the once great city is just an empty field. The wind blows quietly over grass, where a capital used to stand. The constant violence of the borderlands shaped the architecture of the entire region. The landscape is dotted with tall, narrow stone structures known as peel towers. These solitary keeps stand alone on rocky outcrops, surrounded by barren moorland. They were not built for royal wars or great armies. They were built because the region was terrorized by border reivers. These were local families who constantly raided each other for cattle and supplies. Normal farmhouses were simply too dangerous to live in. When riders approached under a bleak, overcast sky, families would lock their cattle inside a wooden wall called a barmkin. Then, they would retreat up into the stone tower and pull up the ladder. The architecture was a direct response to a lawless environment. The towers were built for pure survival. They still stand today, quiet monuments to a time when you could not trust your neighbors in the dark. Far out on the western edge of Scotland sits a small island. Here, the faint grassy ridges of an ancient boundary still catch the morning dew. This is the vallum of Iona Abbey. It was built in the 6th century as a simple earthen wall. It did not exist to stop armies or block the wind. Instead, it served a quiet, spiritual purpose. The monks built it to draw a line between their sacred world and the secular world outside. When you walk across this raised earth today, you cross a threshold that has stood for over 1,000 years. The stone buildings of the modern abbey rise behind it now. But this soft green ridge remains the true edge of the monastery. It is a gentle reminder of how early communities shaped the land. They used simple dirt and grass to carve out a place of lasting peace. Back on the mainland, another early medieval site holds a heavy secret. Inside a quiet parish church in Govan, massive stone grave markers rest on the floor. These are the hogback stones. They were carved in the 10th century to look like Viking longhouses. You can still see the intricate patterns of curved roof shingles cut into the rock. For hundreds of years, these massive stones were completely buried in the dirt of the graveyard outside. The earth simply swallowed them as time passed. Eventually, they were rediscovered and brought indoors to protect them from the rain. Now, they sit in the dim light of the church nave. They look like a fleet of tiny stone ships resting in a quiet harbor. The deep carvings catch the shadows perfectly. They offer a rare, physical link to a time when Norse and Scottish cultures quietly blended together. As the centuries passed, the buildings grew much larger. The nave of Dunfermline Abbey shows this shift in a grand way. If you walk down the main aisle, massive stone pillars rise on either side. These columns are carved with deep zigzag lines and heavy spiral patterns. This bold Romanesque style was not invented here. It was directly copied from a famous cathedral down in England. The Scottish Crown hired skilled stonemasons to bring this exact design north in the 12th century. The deep grooves in the stone catch the dim natural light. They create a striking rhythm as you move through the space. The sheer weight of the stone feels incredibly grounding. You can sense the immense effort it took to carve such perfect geometry by hand. The builders wanted to create a space that felt permanent and strong. They certainly succeeded in that goal. Further south, another grand ruin tells a story of changing tastes. Edinburgh Abbey stands as a perfect physical record of architectural evolution. When you look at the interior walls, you can see time moving upward. The lowest arches are heavy and rounded. This is the classic Romanesque style from the 12th century. But as your eyes move up to the higher tiers, the shapes change. The arches suddenly become pointed and delicate. This marks the arrival of the early Gothic style. You are looking at the exact moment when the builders changed their minds. They updated their blueprints right in the middle of construction. It is rare to see such a clear shift frozen in stone. The warm daylight pours through these empty windows now. It highlights the contrast between the heavy base and the light, reaching top. The building itself shows how ideas slowly shifted over decades. Not far away, the ruined walls of Melrose Abbey hold much smaller details. If you look closely at the weathered sandstone blocks, you will find tiny geometric symbols. These are scattered all across the 14th century stonework. They are known as masons' marks. Each symbol was the personal signature of a medieval stonemason. The workers carved them to prove exactly how many blocks they had cut. This was simply how they made sure they got paid at the end of the week. Today, these marks feel like quiet voices from the past. You can trace the lines with your finger. You can see the exact spot where a specific person stood hundreds of years ago. The grand arches get most of the attention. But these small, hidden signatures ground the building in human effort. They remind us that this massive structure was built by ordinary people doing their daily jobs. Up in the north, Elgin Cathedral features a space designed for quiet meetings. This is the chapter house, where the monks gathered every single day. It is a rare octagonal room from the 13th century. The shape alone makes it feel balanced and calm. But the true marvel is the ceiling. The entire vaulted roof is supported by just one slender stone pillar in the center. The stone ribs branch out from the top of this column like the canopy of a great tree. It is a masterpiece of medieval weight distribution. The builders understood exactly how to balance the heavy stone above. Stone benches line the 8 walls, where the monks once sat to discuss their daily tasks. Soft light filters in through tall Gothic windows. It casts long, slow shadows across the floor. The room feels perfectly still, held up by that single, graceful stem of stone. Down in a green valley, another abbey tells a deeply personal story. Sweetheart Abbey was built using a striking blood-red sandstone. The color is rich and warm, especially when the sun sets. A woman named Lady de Virgilla founded this place in the 13th century. She built it in memory of her late husband. She loved him so much that she carried his embalmed heart in an ivory casket for the rest of her life. When she finally passed away, she was buried here with that casket resting on her chest. The deep red stone of the abbey physically mirrors this lifelong devotion. the intricate Gothic window tracery still stands intact against the sky. The ruined walls glow with a soft, rosy light in the late afternoon. It is a quiet, beautiful place. The architecture itself feels like a lasting monument to a very quiet, very human kind of love. On the eastern coast, the towering red ruins of Arbroath Abbey served a very practical purpose. High up in the south transept wall is a massive circular window. It is known locally as the Round O. In the 14th century, this window was not just for decoration. Every single night, the monks lit a massive beacon fire right behind it. The bright glow shone out across the dark water of the North Sea. It acted as a guiding light for passing ships. It helped sailors navigate safely past the treacherous Bell Rock Reef, hidden offshore. Today, the glass and the fire are long gone. But the great round opening still frames the sky perfectly. On a clear night, you can look up and see the moon shining through the empty stone circle. It is easy to imagine that warm, flickering firelight offering comfort to tired sailors in the dark. In the heart of a busy modern city, a much darker space waits quietly underground. Beneath the floor of Glasgow Cathedral lies a vaulted lower church. It was built in the 1200s to house the tomb of St. Mungo. The space was specifically engineered to feel heavy and close. A thick forest of stone pillars fills the room. These columns were designed to draw the eyes of visiting pilgrims down into the earth. They pull your focus away from the heavens and ground you in the shadows. The air down here is always cool and still. Flickering light dances across the low, ribbed ceiling. The simple stone tomb sits in the center, surrounded by quiet darkness. It feels entirely separate from the bright, soaring nave just upstairs. The builders wanted to create a space for deep, silent reflection. They built a stone forest where the outside world simply fades away. A short journey east brings you to a chapel famous for its intricate carvings. Inside Rosslyn Chapel stands a highly ornate column known as the Apprentice Pillar. It was carved in the 15th century, and is covered in spiraling vines and foliage. The stonework is incredibly delicate, looking almost like lace instead of rock. A famous local legend surrounds this specific pillar. The story says a young apprentice carved it while his master was away on a trip. When the master returned, he saw that the boy had completely surpassed his own skill. In a sudden fit of jealous rage, the master struck the apprentice down. Whether the dark tale is true or not, the pillar remains a stunning piece of art. A single shaft of sunlight often catches the deep grooves of the vines. It highlights the quiet, enduring beauty of a craft that took a lifetime to learn. While churches focused on beauty, castles had to focus on survival. Carlaverock Castle is entirely unique in Britain because of its shape. It was built in the 13th century as a perfect triangle. The castle sits in a flat, marshy landscape near the coast. This triangular design was a brilliant piece of engineering. It required a much shorter moat and fewer defensive walls to protect the inner courtyard. This compact shape made it incredibly difficult for anyone to attack. Today, the wide moat still reflects the massive stone walls and the twin-towered gatehouse. The water is often still, mirroring the grey sky above. The sharp angles of the fortress look striking against the soft, green wetlands. It is a place where clever geometry met the harsh realities of medieval life. The quiet marsh birds now nest, where soldiers once stood watch, bringing peace to this clever stone triangle. Another fortress used a very different shape to survive its environment. Blackness Castle sits on a narrow spit of rock, jutting out into the Firth of Forth. It is often called the ship that never sailed. The 15th century walls are shaped exactly like the pointed prow of a great stone boat. This was not just a stylistic choice. The sharp angle was designed to deflect both harsh ocean waves and heavy artillery fire. When the tide comes in, the grey water crashes right against the base of the walls. From a distance, the castle truly looks like a massive ship pushing through the storm. The wind howls around the stone, but the courtyard inside remains sheltered and calm. It is a brilliant example of building with the landscape, instead of against it. The fortress simply parts the water and the wind, standing firm on its rocky shore. Far up in the Highlands, a different castle relied on the water for its very survival. Urquhart Castle sits on the edge of Loch Ness. If you walk down to the shoreline, you will find a small, hidden archway. This is the Watergate, built in the 14th century. It is a fortified entrance that opens directly onto the dark waters of the loch. In medieval times, the dirt roads through the glens were incredibly dangerous and slow. Because of this, the castle was supplied almost entirely by boat. This small, unassuming door was actually the most important lifeline for the people living inside. Wooden boats would tie up to iron rings in the stone, bringing food and news. Today, the water laps gently against the ruined steps. It is a quiet reminder of how deeply connected this massive fortress was to the deep, cold loch beside it. Sometimes, a castle had to adapt to entirely new kinds of danger. Thraith Castle began as a massive, lonely stone tower. It was built on a quiet island in the River Dee by a lord named Archibald the Grim. For a long time, the tall walls and the river were enough to keep it safe. But nearly a century later, warfare began to change. Cannons were invented, and tall, flat walls were suddenly vulnerable. So the owners added a low, thick outer artillery wall around the base. They built specialized gun loops into the stone. This created one of the earliest defences in the country, designed specifically to withstand cannon fire. Today, the island is peaceful again. You have to take a small wooden boat just to reach the ruins. The river flows quietly past the thick walls, washing away the echoes of those early thunderous weapons. Down in the borders, a massive stone fortress presents a very different kind of strength. Hermitage Castle has an imposing, heavy facade that dominates the lonely valley. If you look up at the 14th century walls, you will notice unusual blind arches. These are large stone arches that have been completely filled in with solid masonry. Originally, these flying arches were built to support a projecting wooden gallery at the top of the walls. Defenders could stand up there and drop things on attackers. But later on, the owners decided to carefully fill the arches with stone instead. They wanted to reinforce the sheer, enduring strength of the building. The result is a fortress that looks almost impossibly solid. It feels like a single massive block of rock resting in the grass. The wind sweeps through the empty valley, but this heavy stone giant does not even seem to notice. Sometimes, a castle was simply too strong for its own good. Bothwell Castle features a colossal circular main tower, known as a donjon. It was built in the 13th century by a wealthy family to show off their immense power. The stonework was absolutely flawless. In fact, it was so well built that it became a problem. When the Scottish army finally recaptured the castle from English forces, they realized they could not leave it standing. They had to spend months manually dismantling half of the massive tower. They tore it down stone by stone, so it could never be used against them again. Today, half of the great cylinder still stands tall against the sky. The other half is a deliberate pile of rubble. It is a fascinating sight. The ruin shows exactly how much effort it took to break something that was built to last forever. In the rolling countryside of Aberdeenshire, another great tower met a similar fate. Kildrummy Castle once featured a massive circular keep, known as the Snow Tower. It was built in the 13th century, using a grand French style of architecture. For hundreds of years, it was the proud centerpiece of the fortress. But it was completely destroyed after the Jacobite risings. The tower was brought down, and the stone was scattered. Today, only the curved foundation stones remain. They sit quietly, buried in the soft green grass of the dry moat. When you walk around the perfect circle of the base, you can easily imagine how tall it once stood. The bright midday sun warms the remaining rocks. It is a peaceful place now. The Grand Tower has simply returned to the earth, leaving behind a gentle footprint in the quiet Scottish landscape. Even when the walls held strong, the doors needed special protection. Many Scottish fortresses like Craigmillar Castle used a unique defense called a yet. This is a massive gate, made entirely of thick, interlocking iron bars. Unlike a traditional portcullis that drops down from a slot in the ceiling, a yet swings open on heavy hinges. The true genius is in the design of the metalwork. The iron bars are woven through each other in an alternating pattern. Because of this clever weaving, the gate cannot be dismantled even if the joints are completely broken. It is a brilliant piece of 15th century blacksmithing. You can still see the rust and wear on the heavy metal today. It hangs quietly in the dim stone archway. It is a heavy, cold reminder of a time when a good door was the only thing keeping the dangerous world outside. When attackers could not get through the gates, they sometimes went underneath them. Under the ruins of St. Andrew's Castle lies a claustrophobic siege mine from the 16th century. Attackers decided to tunnel through the solid rock to collapse the castle walls from below. Inside, the defenders heard the digging. They frantically dug their own countermine to intercept the enemy in the dark. Today you can walk down into these narrow, rough-hewn tunnels. The ceiling is low, and the damp stone walls press in closely. If you look closely in the dim lantern light, you can still see the original pickaxe marks. You can stand in the exact spot where the two tunnels violently met. It is a very quiet space now, but the rock still holds the frantic energy of that moment. It is a rare chance to step directly into a frozen moment of underground history. Inside the walls, life was not always much more relaxed. Doune Castle was designed with a very specific layout in the 14th century. It has two completely separate courtyards and living quarters. This strange design was not created for luxury or comfort. It was built out of pure paranoia. The Duke of Albany designed the castle so that his own mercenary garrison was physically walled off from his personal royal apartments. He did not even trust the men he paid to protect him. Today you can see the high stone wall dividing the interior space in two. Wooden stairs lead up to completely separate entrances. The cold morning light falls across the empty courtyard. It highlights the deep suspicion that shaped the very architecture of the building. Even in their own homes, powerful people often live behind locked doors, listening closely to the quiet sounds of the night. Feeding everyone inside a castle during a long winter required careful planning. Built right into the walls of Doune Castle is a massive, beehive-shaped structure. This is a ducat, or dovecote, from the 15th century. If you step inside the tall circular stone room, you will see something amazing. The walls are lined from floor to ceiling with over 1,000 small, square nesting boxes. In the medieval period, pigeons were a crucial source of fresh meat. When the weather turned cold, most other livestock had to be slaughtered and salted. The pigeons provided fresh food all winter long. A single shaft of light falls from a small opening in the roof. It illuminates the endless rows of empty stone boxes. The room is completely silent now, but it is easy to imagine the soft cooing and the flutter of wings that once filled this clever stone pantry. For the royal court, architecture was also about showing off immense wealth. The Great Hall of Stirling Castle features a truly spectacular roof. It is a 16th century hammer beam design, which is a marvel of medieval engineering. The builders used complex, interlocking oak timbers to span a massive space. They did this without using a single central pillar to hold it up. The room feels incredibly open and grand. The original roof was actually dismantled centuries later, when the hall was used as a simple army barracks. Thankfully, it was carefully restored in the 1990s. Today, natural light streams through the high windows and catches the intricately carved oak. You can look up and trace the clever geometry of the heavy wooden beams. It is a warm, golden space. The roof seems to float above the stone floor, held together by nothing but gravity and perfect craftsmanship. Outside in the courtyards, the displays of wealth became even more elaborate. In the 16th century, King James V commissioned a highly ornate stone fountain for Linlithgow Palace. This beautiful, tiered structure sits right in the center of the cobbled courtyard. It is covered in intricate carvings of figures and royal crests. But this was not just a pretty sculpture. It was a marvel of early plumbing. During major royal celebrations, the engineers would adjust the pipes. They famously made the fountain flow with rich red wine instead of water. It was a lavish spectacle designed specifically to impress visiting ambassadors. Today, gentle streams of clear water flow from the stone spouts under the soft daylight. The courtyard is quiet now, but the fountain still stands as a reminder of those grand, colorful parties where wine flowed freely and the palace echoed with music and laughter. Sometimes, a ceiling was used to send a very clear political message. The wooden roof of St. Maca's Cathedral in Aberdeen is completely flat and divided into square panels. Carved in the early 16th century, it is decorated with 48 brightly painted heraldic shields. If you look straight up, you can read the room like a map of medieval power. The ceiling places the coat of arms of the King of Scots, right alongside the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. This was a bold architectural statement. It was designed to show that Scotland was an independent, equal player on the European stage. The soft natural light brings out the rich reds, blues and golds of the painted wood. It is a quiet, beautiful space today. But that colorful ceiling still proudly declares the confidence of a nation painted high above the heads of the congregation. As cities grew, they sometimes had to build right over their own past. The famous underground streets of Edinburgh, like Mary King's Close, were originally open to the sky. They were steep, narrow medieval alleyways between tall stone tenements. But in the 18th century, the city needed space for a grand new royal exchange. Instead of clearing the land, they simply chopped the tops off the old buildings. They used the lower floors as the foundation for the new structure above. In doing so, they buried the old streets alive. Today, you can walk through these hidden, subterranean alleys. Wooden overhangs block out the modern world. The damp stone walls feel exactly as they did hundreds of years ago. It is a strange, quiet place. The modern city rushes by just a few feet above your head, completely unaware of the forgotten medieval world sleeping quietly in the dark. The rhythm of a medieval Scottish burgh begins with a simple sound. High in the stone tollbooth tower, a heavy bronze bell rings out at dawn. This single note tells the town guards to open the heavy wooden gates. It lets the morning light and the first travelers spill into the dirt streets. The entire town moves to the strict timing of this bell. It rings again at dusk to signal the curfew. The word comes from the French phrase, for covering the fire. When that evening bell sounds, every family must bank their hearth fires for the night. The rule is strict and vital. These towns are built almost entirely of wood and thatch. A single stray spark in the dark could take down whole streets. You can feel the town settle as the fires are covered. The bell brings a forced, quiet peace to the end of every day. When the sun rises higher, the center of town comes alive around the market cross. This tall stone pillar stands on a stepped base in the main square. It is the absolute center of local trade. By law, no merchant can sell their goods in private. Every piece of wool, grain and fish must be brought right to this stone cross. They can only sell on specific market days. This open system keeps trade fair and visible. It also lets the Burgh Council easily inspect the quality of the goods. More importantly, it ensures the town can collect its proper tax. You can hear the low hum of voices as people haggle over wooden stalls. The cross casts a slow shadow across the dirt as the hours pass. It is a steady, reliable anchor for the community. The stone watches over every coin traded and every promise made in the daylight. Once a year, the usual market stalls are cleared away for a different kind of gathering. Every able-bodied man must step onto the village green for the mandatory weapon show. They call it the weapon show. It is a vital ritual to ensure the kingdom is always ready for war. Men line up in the crisp morning air with whatever gear they own. Some hold simple wooden spears, or heavy iron axes. Others carry longbows, or wear patched leather armor. The local sheriff walks slowly down the line. He inspects every blade for rust, and checks every bowstring for wear. It is a serious duty, but it also feels like a rare community reunion. Neighbors stand shoulder to shoulder on the damp grass. They compare their gear and share quiet jokes while they wait. The sheriff nods his approval, and the men know they are ready to protect their homes. When the sun finally sets, the safety of the dark streets falls to the night watch. Citizens take turns walking the unpaved roads in the dead of night. They carry a glowing horn lantern and a long, heavy polearm called a halberd. The town is completely black, lit only by the moon and their swinging lanterns. They step quietly past the sleeping timber houses. The watchmen are looking for the two greatest threats to their fragile world. They watch for thieves slipping through the shadows, and they watch for uncontrolled fires. The smell of banked peat and wood smoke hangs heavy in the cold air. You can hear the slow, steady crunch of their boots on the dirt. It is a lonely, quiet job, but their steady presence lets the rest of the town sleep deeply. They are the waking eyes of the community until the dawn bell rings again. Far above the quiet towns, the royal castles run on a much more intense rhythm. The massive stone kitchens at Stirling are hot, loud and chaotic. The fires here roar late into the night to feed the king and his court. The most grueling job belongs to the turnspit. This is often a young boy sitting on a small wooden stool near the blazing hearth. He spends hours slowly turning a heavy iron handle. The spit holds a massive cut of meat that must roast perfectly evenly. The heat is fierce, and the work is endlessly repetitive. The boy watches the fat drip and sizzle into the flames. The smell of rich roasting meat fills the vaulted stone room. It is a small, hidden corner of the grand castle. Yet this quiet, steady turning is what keeps the great feasts moving. The king dines well because a boy turns a handle. The meat roasting in those great castle kitchens often comes from a highly formalized ritual. Hunting in the royal forests is not a quiet stalk through the woods. The king and his nobles do not track the red deer themselves. Instead, they rely on hundreds of local peasants acting as beaters. These workers spread out through the dense, fragrant pine forests. They shout and wave long sticks, driving the wild herds forward. The deer are pushed toward a narrow, steep valley. The nobles wait there patiently with their hounds and drawn longbows. It is a massive, coordinated effort that changes the whole landscape for a day. The quiet woods fill with sudden noise and movement. Then, just as quickly, the hunt ends. and the forest settles back into silence. The beaters walk home through the dappled sunlight. The royal party returns to the castle, leaving the woods to the wind. Away from the royal courts, life in the great abbeys moves at a much gentler pace. The monks at Edinburgh lay out their gardens with strict, careful purpose. They do not plant flowers just for beauty. They cultivate neat, square beds of vital medicinal herbs. You can smell the sharp, clean scent of yarrow, which they use to stop bleeding. They strip willow bark to ease pain, and they grow feverfew to calm headaches. These quiet, walled gardens serve as the only hospitals and pharmacies for miles around. A monk in a dark habit kneels in the damp soil. He carefully cuts the green stems with a small iron knife. The morning sun warms the stone walls and the fragrant earth. It is a place of deep peace and practical healing. The monks work in silent rhythm with the seasons, growing the cures that keep the surrounding villages alive. That same careful devotion extends into the warm, flower-dusted rooms of the Abbey bakery. Making the communion bread is a deeply sacred task for the brothers. The monks who bake the host must follow strict rules of purity. They wash their hands and faces thoroughly before they even touch the flour. They put on special, perfectly clean linen garments over their heavy wool habits. As they mix the water and flour, they do not speak. Instead, they sing psalms continuously while they knead the dough on thick wooden tables. The rhythmic chanting fills the warm room, blending with the crackle of the brick oven. They believe the bread must be spiritually pure long before it is ever consecrated. You can feel the reverence in every fold of the dough. It is a beautiful, quiet ritual. The simple act of baking becomes a long, musical prayer in the firelight. When the baking is done, the monks gather to eat in the grand stone refectory. Meals here are taken in absolute, unbroken silence. The brothers sit side by side at long, heavy wooden tables. They eat a very simple diet of coarse bread, thick vegetable pottage and weak ale. There is no clatter of conversation, only the soft scrape of wooden spoons on wooden bowls. High above them, a single monk stands in a raised stone pulpit. He reads aloud from heavy religious texts while the others eat. His voice echoes softly off the high, vaulted ceiling. The monks listen closely, ensuring their minds are fed just as much as their bodies. The natural light from the tall windows slowly fades as they finish their meal. It is a shared, communal moment, yet deeply private for each man. The silence makes the simple food feel like a quiet blessing. The deepest silence in the Abbey is found in the scriptorium at Melrose. Here, The rhythm of the day is measured in slow, careful drops of ink. Monks spend countless hours copying ancient manuscripts by hand. They sit at slanted wooden desks, relying entirely on the natural light pouring through the Gothic windows. They write with a special ink made from crushed oak galls and iron salts. It goes on pale but darkens to a rich, permanent black as it dries. The work is incredibly painstaking. A monk might spend an entire year completing just one single book. You can hear the soft, rhythmic scratch of a quill moving across thick parchment. The air smells faintly of dust, old leather, and iron. They do not rush. They know they are preserving knowledge for centuries to come. The quiet room feels suspended in time, anchored by the steady movement of hands. Outside the abbey walls, the daily rhythm of food requires a different kind of patience. The diet of the common people relies almost entirely on oats. Grinding those oats is a heavy, daily chore that begins before dawn. Before watermills are built, women use a simple tool called a quern stone. It consists of two heavy, circular rocks placed on the dirt floor near the hearth. A woman kneels and turns the top stone by a wooden handle. She spends hours every morning grinding enough coarse meal to bake the day's flatbreads, known as bannocks. The stone makes a low, grinding rumble that fills the small house. Coarse flour slowly spills out from the edges onto a clean cloth. It is hard, repetitive work, but it sets the heartbeat of the home. The smell of the first baking bread makes the long morning effort feel deeply worthwhile. Another constant rhythm by the village hearth is the endless spinning of wool. Making cloth takes so much time that women carry a distaff and spindle everywhere they go. The distaff holds the raw, fluffy wool tucked neatly under one arm. The spindle dangles below, twisting the fibers into strong thread as it spins. A woman will spin while walking to the market, or while watching her children play. She spins by the warm flickering light of the fire long into the night. It takes many hours of this steady twisting just to make enough thread for one single garment. The wooden spindle becomes an extension of her hand. The soft whirring sound is a permanent background noise in every home. It is a quiet, productive habit that never really stops. The warmth of their winter clothes is earned through thousands of hours of this gentle, spinning rhythm. In these quiet rural villages, even marriage follows a simpler, more direct rhythm. A priest might only visit these remote areas once or twice a year. Couples do not wait for a grand church ceremony to begin their lives together. Instead, they practice a tradition known as hand fasting. They simply walk out onto the village green with a few friends and family members. The couple joins hands and exchanges their vows right there in the open air. Under the law of the time, this irregular marriage is completely legally binding. It is recognized as a permanent, lifelong commitment, without any paperwork or formal blessing. The wind blows across the grass as they make their quiet promises. It is a deeply practical way to build a family. The community witnesses the bond, and that is enough. Life moves forward, anchored by a simple joining of hands in the afternoon sun. Some families choose to build their lives entirely off the land. Even into this era, people still live on crannogs in the Highland lochs. These are artificial islands built from heavy timber piles, driven deep into the muddy loch bed. A large, round wooden house with a thick thatched roof sits on the platform. Living out over the water provides perfect security from roaming wolves and sudden raiders. A narrow wooden walkway connects the home to the shore, and it can be easily defended. The water laps gently against the wooden posts all day and night. The family can drop a line and fish directly from their front door. The morning mist rolls thick across the calm water, hiding the house from the world. It is a damp, isolated way to live, but it is incredibly safe. The loch embraces the home, keeping the dangers of the forest far away. The rivers offer more than just protection. They are the highways of the deep forests. Transporting massive pine logs from the woods of Mar to the coastal shipyards is nearly impossible by cart. Instead, the Highlanders wait patiently for the spring melt to swell the River Dee. When the water runs high and fast, they lash the giant logs together into rough rafts. Men step onto the floating timber and ride it straight down the roaring rapids. They use long wooden poles to steer away from jagged rocks and shallow banks. It is a highly dangerous, seasonal job that requires perfect balance and nerve. The cold river spray hits their faces as they rush through the dense green valleys. The sound of rushing water and groaning wood echoes through the trees. It is a wild, thrilling ride that brings the wealth of the forest down to the waiting sea. On the calmer waters of the River Tweed, fishing requires a much lighter touch. Local fishermen use tiny, bowl-shaped boats, known as coracles. These clever little vessels are made of a woven willow frame covered tightly in animal hides. They are incredibly light and perfectly waterproof. A man can easily carry his boat upside down on his back as he walks down to the riverbank. He sets it gently in the water and climbs in with a single wooden paddle. He paddles quietly out into the current to check his salmon nets in the soft dawn light. The boat bobs easily over the ripples, leaving almost no wake behind. When the morning work is done, he simply lifts the boat and carries it home again. It is a perfect, elegant design. The fisherman moves like a shadow on the water, taking only what he needs from the quiet river. Where the rivers meet the sea, the rhythm of life is dictated by the autumn herring migration. The survival of the East Coast fishing villages depends entirely on this massive arrival of fish. When the silver shoals finally appear, the whole community drops everything to work through the night. The men row out in small wooden boats, hauling heavy, wet nets filled with struggling fish. Back on the wooden docks, the women wait in heavy wool aprons under the flickering light of oil lanterns. They work quickly and skillfully, gutting the herring and packing them tightly into wooden barrels of salt. The smell of brine, fish and lamp oil fills the cold night air. Everyone moves with a shared, urgent purpose. They must preserve the catch before it spoils. This single, exhausting push in the dark ensures the village will have enough food and trade to survive the coming winter. On the rocky shores of the Western Islands, the sea provides a different kind of harvest. The soil here is thin and sandy, making it very hard to grow enough crops. The islanders rely on the ocean to nourish the land. After a heavy storm, massive piles of dark, wet seaweed wash up on the beaches. The community heads down to the shoreline with large woven baskets. They gather the heavy kelp and haul it up the dunes to their small fields. They spread the salty seaweed thickly over the earth. As it breaks down, it provides the vital fertilizer that allows their oats and barley to thrive. The wind whips off the grey water as they work in the damp sand. It is a beautiful cycle of survival. The violent storms that batter the coast also deliver the exact nutrients the islanders need to keep their farms alive. Further north, the sheer cliffs of the islands demand a much more terrifying harvest. The men here practice the dangerous ritual of fowling to feed their families. They weave thick, strong ropes out of twisted heather roots. A man ties the rope around his waist and lets his friends lower him over the edge of the cliff. He dangles hundreds of feet above the crashing, freezing ocean. He swings gently against the rock face, reaching into narrow crevices to gather wild seabird eggs. These eggs are a vital, rich source of protein for the isolated communities. The wind howls around him, and the seabirds scream in the cold air. He must trust the strength of the heather and the steady hands of his neighbors above. It is a breathtaking act of bravery. They pull him back up over the grassy edge, his pockets heavy with the fragile, precious food. When spring arrives in the highlands and islands, it brings the quiet, communal rhythm of peat cutting. Families venture out onto the vast, open moors to harvest their winter fuel. They use a specialized, angled iron spade, called a tearsgear. With careful, practiced motions, they slice wet, dark blocks of earth, straight from the bog. They stack these heavy blocks into intricate, airy little pyramids on the grass. The wind blows through the gaps, slowly drying the wet earth over the long summer months. The moor becomes dotted with thousands of these neat dark stacks. It is peaceful, rhythmic work, under the wide, pale sky. The smell of the damp earth is rich and sweet. By autumn the blocks will be light, dry and ready to burn. This careful spring labor ensures every family will have a warm, slow-burning hearth to survive the bitter cold of the long winter ahead. That dried peat is the absolute center of life inside a Hebridean black house. These low, stone dwellings are built to withstand the fierce coastal winds. Inside, the entire family's day revolves around the central hearth fire burning on a flat stone. There is no chimney in the thick thatched roof. The fragrant blue smoke from the peat simply rises and filters slowly out through the straw. This trapped smoke is actually a clever design. It kills insects in the thatch and keeps the whole house incredibly warm. It also leaves a permanent heavy scent of earth and smoke on everyone's clothes and hair. The fire casts a soft, warm glow on the dirt floor and the stone walls. The wind howls outside, but the air inside is thick, warm and safe. The hearth is never allowed to go out, serving as the steady, glowing heart of the home. Near that warm hearth, the creation of traditional island cloth involves a rhythmic, communal ritual. When a new length of woven wool is finished, it must be shrunk and thickened to block the wind. The women gather around a long, heavy wooden table for a process called walking. They soak the fabric in a traditional wash of stale urine. The natural ammonia perfectly cleanses the heavy, greasy oils from the raw sheep's wool. Then, they rhythmically beat the wet cloth against the wood. They sing fast, rhythmic songs to keep their hands moving together in perfect time. The wet wool slaps against the table, slowly shrinking into a dense, incredibly warm material. The smell is sharp, but the mood is bright and social. It is hard physical labor turned into a shared musical performance. The finished cloth will protect their families from the worst winter storms off the sea. When summer finally warms the glens, the rhythm of highland life shifts up into the hills. Communities practice a seasonal migration known as transhumance. They move their herds of shaggy cattle high up into the mountain passes, to graze on the fresh, green grass. The men stay down in the valleys to tend the vital crops. The women and children live up in the hills in small, temporary stone huts called sheilings. These little round shelters have simple turf roofs that blend perfectly into the landscape. The long, bright summer days are spent milking the cows and churning rich butter and cheese. The air up here is crisp, clean, and filled with the sound of grazing cattle. It is a peaceful, sunny escape from the heavier chores of the valley. The families enjoy this quiet time in the high pastures before the autumn chill forces them back down. Down in the grand stone halls of the Highland chieftains, the evening brings a different kind of music. The most respected figure in the clan, right after the lord himself, is the harper. He sits near the roaring fire, holding a small, beautiful clarsach, strung with brass and silver wires. He does not pluck the strings with his fingertips. Instead, he uses his long, carefully shaped fingernails to strike the metal. This technique creates a sharp, ringing tone that easily carries over the loud noise of the feasting hall. The bright notes dance through the smoky air, weaving complex, ancient melodies. The clan members quiet down to listen, as the music fills the vaulted room. The harper holds the mood of the entire hall in his hands. His wire-strung harp brings a touch of refined, glittering beauty to the rough and rugged life of the Highland warriors. When the harp fades, the history of the clan is spoken into the quiet night. The Highlanders do not write their history down in dusty books. It is memorized and protected by the Seneca, the official storyteller of the clan. On long, dark winter nights, the entire family gathers close around the glowing peat fire. The older man stands and begins to recite hours of complex genealogy and heroic poetry from memory. He speaks of great battles, ancient alliances, and the brave deeds of their ancestors. His voice rises and falls with the rhythm of the flames. The children listen wide-eyed, learning exactly who they are and where they come from. The spoken words bind the room together in the dark. The Senechi ensures that the clan's proud identity will survive to see another generation. The fire burns low, and the stories settle deeply into the sleeping house. In the quiet fields of Withorn, a rough stone pillar stands in the grass. It marks the very edge of a changing world. This is the Latinus stone. It dates back to the 5th century. It is the oldest Christian monument in Scotland. The Roman Empire was slowly falling apart at the time. Yet, a man named Latinus raised this marker here. He carved it to honor his young daughter. The faint Latin letters still catch the pale morning light. They show how old customs lingered in this remote place. Roman names and new faiths survived together. The stone feels deeply personal. It is not a grand imperial decree. It is just a father remembering his child. You can almost feel the damp chill of that ancient morning. The grass bends in the wind, just as it did then. The stone remains rooted in the earth. It is a quiet anchor in a shifting landscape. Not far away, the muddy banks of the River Almond hold their own secrets. A massive stone lioness once lay hidden in the dark water at Cramond. Roman hands carved this fierce creature long ago. But the empire eventually vanished. The local people found the imposing statue left behind. They were likely unsettled by its strange, heavy stare. So they rolled the great stone beast into the river. The cool mud swallowed it whole. It rested there in the dark for centuries. The river flowed quietly over its carved back. Reeds grew thick along the banks. The water kept the secret safe. The lioness became just another hidden stone in the riverbed. It is strange to think of such a powerful symbol cast aside. The locals simply wanted the past to wash away. The river accepted the offering without a sound. The water smoothed the rough edges of history. Further inland, a different kind of Roman treasure met a quiet end. A traprain law, people lived in roundhouses with earthen walls. They did not care about the beauty of Roman art. Archaeologists found a massive hoard of silver buried here. It was full of finely crafted plates and delicate bowls. But the local Britons had chopped them all into pieces. They hacked the beautiful silver apart with heavy blades. To them, the metal was only useful as raw weight. They used the rough chunks as simple currency. A delicate Roman dish became just another piece of trade. The silver lost its grand shape. It became something practical for a harsh world. You can picture the dull gleam of the metal in the dim light. The fire crackled in the center of the room. The past was broken down to build a new local economy. Nature holds memories that are even older than the stones. In a quiet churchyard stands the Fortingal yew. This massive tree has a split and hollow trunk. It is estimated to be over 3,000 years old. The yew was already ancient when early monks arrived. They decided to build their small timber church right next to it. The local people already viewed the great tree as sacred. The monks simply added their own prayers to the site. The tree has watched generations come and go. Its dark green needles brush against the cool air. The bark is deeply wrinkled and rough to the touch. You can stand inside the hollow center of the trunk. It feels like stepping into a living cave. The air smells of damp earth and old wood. The tree breathes slowly through the centuries. It offers a quiet shade that outlasts any human empire. Stones can also speak in unexpected ways. The Ruthwell Cross is a tall monument of red sandstone. It dates back to the 8th century. The surface is covered in rich, complex carvings. But the edges hold something truly strange. Sharp runic letters run down the sides of the stone. They spell out a poem called The Dream of the Rood. The poem is told from the perspective of a wooden cross. The wood itself describes how it felt to be part of the crucifixion. It speaks of its own sorrow and heavy burden. The words give a voice to a silent object. The runes catch the soft, raking sunlight of late afternoon. You have to step close to read the ancient marks. The stone feels warm under your hand. It is a beautiful blend of old runic script and new faith. The poem waits quietly for anyone willing to read it. Sometimes, different worlds meet on a single small object. The Hunterston brooch is a stunning piece of early silverwork. It is cast with delicate amber and fine Celtic knots. It was made in the 8th century with great care. The pin is a true masterpiece of local craft. But centuries later, a Viking held this beautiful thing. He turned it over in his rough hands. He took a sharp tool and scratched tiny runes on the back. He did not destroy the brooch. He simply carved his name to claim it as his own. The tiny letters are barely visible in the dim light. They form a peaceful bridge between two very different cultures. The silver feels heavy and cool to the touch. The amber glows softly, like a trapped drop of sunlight. The brooch carries the quiet pride of the maker. It also holds the simple joy of the finder. Some monuments leave us with nothing but questions. Swano's stone stands in a misty field near Forres. It is a massive slab of rock, 21 feet tall. The stone is covered in deeply weathered carvings. You can see a grand procession of marching warriors. Horses and men move across the rough surface. The details are incredibly complex and carefully planned. Yet, no one knows exactly what story it tells. We do not know which battle it marks. We do not know who ordered it to be carved. We do not even know why it was placed in this specific field. The tall grass whispers around its base. The grey stone blends into the overcast sky. It is a towering mystery, left in plain sight. The warriors march silently through the centuries. They guard a secret that was lost long ago. The stone simply stands and watches the weather change. Danger often shaped the way people built their world. The village of Abernethy holds a very strange structure. A pencil-thin round tower rises 74 feet into the air. It was built in the 11th century. The stone walls are smooth and tightly fitted, but the tower has no stairs inside. There are only simple wooden ladders. The single door is placed several feet off the ground. This was a very deliberate choice by the builders. When Viking raiders appeared on the horizon, the monks would run inside. They would pull the heavy wooden ladder up behind them. The high door kept them safe from the chaos below. You can imagine the frantic rush to climb up. Then, the sudden, breathless quiet inside the dark stone tube. The air would be thick with dust and fear. Today the tower stands peacefully in the grey light. It is a quiet monument to survival. There is only one other tower like it in the country. It stands in the quiet town of Brechin. This tower also has an elevated stone doorway. The arch is decorated with careful carvings. Above the door, there is a small figure of a crucifix, but the carving has a very strange detail. The figure of Christ is shown with noticeably short bowed legs. It is a highly unusual stylistic choice. No one knows why the medieval mason carved it this way. Perhaps it was a mistake in the stone. Perhaps it was a local style that we no longer understand. The small figure looks down from its high perch. The stone is worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. The strange proportions give the carving a very human, fragile feel. It is a small quirk, frozen in solid rock. The tower keeps its quiet watch over the empty streets. Even ancient tombs were not safe from wandering travelers. My show is a dark, chambered cairn, built in Neolithic times. In the 12th century, a group of Vikings broke inside. They were just looking for shelter from a fierce winter storm. They sat in the pitch-black chamber, while the wind howled outside. To pass the time, they carved runes into the massive stone blocks. They left behind the largest collection of runic graffiti in the world. They did not carve mystical spells or dark curses. Instead, they left very ordinary human thoughts. One carved that he placed his runes high up on the wall. Another simply wrote that a woman named Ingigirth was beautiful. The flickering light of their torches must have danced on the walls. You can almost hear their low voices echoing in the damp space. They left a spark of life in a very old, very quiet tomb. The sea sometimes returns what it has taken. In 1831, a heavy storm battered the dunes at Uig Bay. The wind blew away the white sand to reveal a small stone chamber. Inside sat 93 intricately carved chess pieces. They are known today as the Lewis chessmen. They were crafted from walrus ivory in the 12th century. The pieces are small, smooth and heavy in the hand. The kings sit with their swords drawn across their laps. The queens rest their chins on their hands. They have a look of profound, almost comical boredom. You can see the tiny details of their woven hair and thick robes. The ivory has yellowed softly over the centuries. They look like they are waiting for a game that never started. The overcast daylight makes the pale figures glow against the sand. They are tiny, quiet witnesses to a very old world. Some quiet places were born out of sudden disaster. On the island of Inchcolm, there is a tiny stone cell. It has a rough, pointed roof and thick walls. It was built for a solitary hermit in the 12th century. The hermit lived a life of total silence near the shore. One day King Alexander I was shipwrecked on the island. The hermit took the cold, wet king into his small home. He kept the king alive for 3 long days. He fed him nothing but fresh milk, and gathered shellfish. The king sat by the small fire, listening to the crashing waves. He was so grateful for his survival, that he built an abbey there. The grand abbey grew, but the tiny cell remained. The wooden door still creaks in the misty morning wind. It is a humble reminder of a simple meal that changed history. Life in a monastery followed very strict and specific rules. On the Isle of May, the monks had a truly bizarre diet. Religious laws forbade them from eating meat on many days of the year. So they turned to the cold sea around them. They survived almost entirely on a diet of cod. They ate so much white fish that it changed their very bones. Excavations show distinct chemical signatures of a heavy marine diet. You can picture the long wooden tables in the stone dining room. The monks sat in silence, breaking their bread. The smell of cooked fish and salty air filled the damp room. The natural light filtered through small, narrow windows. The routine was endless and unchanging. The sea provided their food, and the sea shaped their bodies. Their devotion was written directly into their skeletons. It was a hard, quiet life tied to the tides. The landscape itself sometimes seems to have a voice. The Isle of Ege has a beautiful, curving coastline. It is home to a beach known as the Singing Sands. The beach is made of pure quartz crystals. When you walk across the white sand, it squeaks and hums beneath your boots. The sound is sharp and strange in the clear air. Medieval travelers did not understand the science of the crystals. They believed the noise came from fairies or trapped spirits. They thought the voices were warning them away from the lonely shore. You can see a single set of footprints stretching down the beach. The bright sky reflects off the gentle waves. The humming sound follows every step you take. It feels like the island is gently talking back to you. The sand holds its strange music, waiting for the next quiet visitor to walk by. The water can be much louder and far more dangerous. The Gulf of Corryvreckan lies between 2 rocky islands. It holds the 3rd largest whirlpool in the entire world. The ocean churns and boils in a massive dark circle. Medieval sailors were terrified of this turbulent stretch of sea. They believed a giant hag named Cailleach Bur controlled the waters. They said she used the whirlpool as a massive tub to wash her great plaid cloak. The roar of the rushing water signaled the harsh arrival of winter. You can hear the deep, heavy sound of the current from miles away. A small wooden boat would have to keep a very safe distance. The stormy sky presses down on the dark, foaming waves. The water spins with a cold, relentless energy. It is easy to see why people blamed a giant for such a wild and restless place. Power did not always live behind thick castle walls. The lords of the Isles ruled from a tiny grassy island. It sits in a calm loch at Finlagan. They did not build a massive stone fortress to show their strength. Instead, they held their parliament in the open air. The chieftains gathered around a flat stone slab on the grass. The rock had a single bare footprint carved deeply into it. A new lord would place his foot into the carving. He would stand there to swear his loyalty to the land. The bright daylight warmed the men in their thick tartans. The water of the loch lapped quietly against the muddy shore. It was a simple, grounded way to claim authority. The ruler was literally tied to the earth he governed. The wind blew freely across the open council. The stone footprint remains, waiting in the quiet grass. Some families put their faith in very fragile things. Inside Dunvegan Castle, there is a dim stone room. A scrap of faded yellow silk rests carefully on a wooden table. This is the famous fairy flag. It is actually a piece of cloth from medieval Syria. But local legend says it was a gift from the fairies. The clan believes the flag will save them from total destruction. They only have to wave it in the middle of a losing battle. However, the magic comes with a strict rule. The flag can only be used 3 times. They have supposedly unfurled it twice already. The silk is tattered and worn thin by time. Faint red spots mark the delicate fabric. A single shaft of sunlight catches the dust in the quiet room. The flag looks too fragile to stop an army. Yet it holds the heavy weight of a final hope. Magic was often used for very practical, everyday problems. In rural valleys like Kilmartin Glen, people relied on curing stones. These were simply smooth, round pebbles, often made of pale quartz. The stones were shaped by years of tumbling in river water. If a valuable cow fell ill, the farmer did not panic. He simply took his curing stone and dipped it into a wooden bucket. The water was then given to the sick animal to drink. The stones were kept safe in small, soft leather pouches. They were passed down through families for many generations. You can picture a rough, calloused hand holding the smooth pebble. The soft morning light catches the clear water dripping from the stone. A large Highland cow waits patiently in the background. It was a quiet ritual of hope. The stone was a small comfort in a hard and unpredictable life. Even a simple feast had its own hidden surprises. The Butemazer is a large communal drinking bowl from the 1300s. It is carved from smooth maple wood and rimmed with bright silver. It was meant to be shared around a heavy oak table, but the bowl holds a clever secret at its center. A small silver lion sits firmly attached to the bottom. When the bowl was full of dark ale, the lion was completely hidden. As the bowl was passed around, the men would drink. The level of the liquid would slowly drop. Gradually, the little silver lion would seem to rise out of the ale. The warm firelight would catch the wet silver as it appeared. It was a small moment of delight at the end of a long meal. The bowl turned a simple drink into a quiet, shared event. Some objects are so important that their truth becomes blurred. The Stone of Destiny is a rough block of pale sandstone. It was used for centuries to crown the kings of the realm. But in 1296, the English army marched in and stole it away. They took the heavy stone back south as a prize. However, a very persistent legend whispers a different story. People say the monks of Scone hid the real stone in a river. They supposedly gave the English soldiers a clever fake. If the story is true, every monarch since has been crowned on a replica. You can imagine the real stone sitting on a grassy riverbank. Reeds partially obscure its rough rectangular shape. The dim light of dusk hides it from searching eyes. The river flows quietly past the true seat of power. The heavy sandstone keeps its secret perfectly still in the mud. Borders are often places of tension, but they also need peace. The Lochmaben Stain is a massive, solitary granite boulder. It sits alone in a flat, grassy field near the English line. For centuries, this weathered rock served a very specific purpose. It was the designated neutral ground for rival wardens. Scottish and English leaders would ride out to meet at this exact spot. They gathered in the grey mist to negotiate truces and exchange prisoners. They settled bitter disputes here without starting a full war. The boulder was a silent witness to countless tense conversations. You can picture the men on horseback, circling the stone. The overcast sky presses down on the damp field. The horses breathe heavy clouds of steam into the cold air. The stone offered a rare, quiet pause in a violent world. It was a heavy anchor for a fragile peace. Trust in trade required a different kind of heavy anchor. The Burg of Stirling was given a very important job. They were trusted to safeguard the official standard for liquid measurement. This object was known simply as the Stirling jug. It is a heavy, plain vessel made of solid brass. This simple jug dictated the exact volume of a true pint. It ensured that no merchant could cheat a customer buying ale or oil. The jug rested on a rustic wooden table inside a dim tollbooth. The soft glow of a hearth fire warmed the cold stone walls. The brass caught the light, looking solid and reliable. It was the final word in any market dispute. A fair trade relied entirely on the shape of this one metal cup. It brought a quiet sense of order to the noisy, crowded streets. The jug stood firm against greed and trickery. Sometimes, the rules of the realm clashed with simple fun. In 1457, King James II grew very frustrated with his people. He officially banned the playing of football and an early game called golf. The king was furious about how his subjects spent their free time. They were out on the grassy coastal dunes, hitting small balls with wooden clubs. The king wanted them practicing their archery to defend the borders instead. You can picture the men standing on the green links at St. Andrews. They wear simple tunics and hold their crude clubs. They look guiltily toward a royal official arriving on horseback. The bright afternoon sun shines on the rolling dunes. The sea breeze blows through the tall grass. The men just wanted a quiet afternoon of sport. But the king saw only a dangerous distraction from war. The game had to wait for more peaceful times. The sea offered places where the rules of men hardly mattered. The base rock is a steep volcanic island in the Firth of Forth. It rises sharply from the cold water, like a giant tooth. Over the years it held a hermitage, a castle, and even a prison. But its most constant residents were never human. The rock is home to a massive colony of gannets. The large white seabirds cover almost every inch of the upper cliffs. There are so many birds and so much guano that the rock changes color. From a distance, it looks like the island is permanently covered in bright snow. The bright sunlight glares off the white surface. A small stone fortress clings nervously to the lower edge. The air is filled with the endless, chaotic sound of the flock. The birds claim the rock completely, ignoring the stone walls below. Back on the mainland, the rules of the community were strictly enforced. Attached to the exterior wall of Duddingston Kirk is a rusted iron collar. It hangs from a short, heavy chain. This device is known as the jugs. It was used for public penance in the 16th century. Petty criminals or people who skipped church were locked into it. The cold iron was fastened tightly around their neck on Sunday mornings. They had to stand there while the entire congregation walked past. The neighbors would look at them and judge their mistakes. The bleak, overcast sky offered no comfort to the prisoner. The rough stone wall was cold against their back. It was a quiet, deeply uncomfortable kind of punishment. The iron collar remains bolted to the church today. It is a harsh reminder of how closely the village watched its own people. Our walk through medieval Scotland is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.